The dysfunctional communication in sick, dysfunctional families. I found out stuff years later that I'd never, if I would have known how my family members were talking behind my back, I would have demanded change or I would have never had anything to do with them again. And when my kid was, I have one kid, when my kid was a young teenager, they were really starting to get out of control. I was sick. I was being long term misdiagnosed and I was being harmed by my prescribing doctors. I was being harmed by prescribing and I was being harmed by medications, and I continued to be misdiagnosed and suffer. And and my kid was starting to get out of control. And all throughout my life, you know, as I'm sick and I had severe anxiety, I used to have depression, and but unbeknownst to me, I was physically medically sick, and I was being chronically misdiagnosed. My health issues were chronically being misdiagnosed as anxiety or depression. They'd add on more and more medications, antidepressants, sleeping pills, anti-anxiety medications. I was getting sicker and sicker from the medications. And they'd add more and more medications. And doctors had convinced themselves that nothing was wrong with me when I was really seriously suffering from medical issues, but also from the medical issues that the medications were causing me. So I'm gradually getting sicker and sicker. I'm not sleeping. My sleep is gradually getting less and less through the years. And I'm really in trouble. Like I'm sleeping, I was sleeping 5 hours a night for years, then 4 hours a night for years, then 3 hours a night for years. And I'm exasperated, and my kid is also struggling. Her bio dad my husband passed away. Her stepdad, my next partner, passed away. And we've always had this extreme lack of family support. And as I'm struggling and I'm being made to think that my health issues are psych issues, all these doctors are saying to me, like, where's your family? And when my husband died, and then my next partner died, and I'm in distress. I'm in distress. Well, the first one was a suicide, and my daughter and I were really in distress. There was no support for us. A couple of them showed up for, the funerals, but that was it. Right after the death, my sister that I was closest to called my daughter once. My daughter was a kid, called her once and said, "Oh, hey, how are you doing? Sorry about your dad. What are you going to be for Halloween?" Because Halloween was coming up. That was it. That was the extent of the support. When these deaths occurred, and I was breaking down. When these deaths occurred, I was so close to these men. Like they were my family. They were, I mean, you're in shock. I don't want to break down. You're in shock. You're devastated. And also, these are your co-parents. These are the only other people on earth that love your kid as much as you do and would be willing to die for your kid, right? These are people that you're co-parenting with. And these are people that would step up for you when you're in trouble, right? Love and support. These men of mine. And when they died, I was just devastated. And every doctor I knew, or counselor, or anybody, Where's your family? Like, where are they? They, and my family can bullshit and say, well, we live far away, blah, blah. The phone, email, just you can support and love someone and lift them up with your words. And my daughter and I were, we were drowning. And everybody was saying, where's your family? Where's your family throughout the years, And then a couple of years would pass and another death would occur. And where's your family? Where's your family? And I'm just hanging by a thread, right? And my kid is suffering because she's got one parent left, and the one parent is hanging by a thread. And no one in the family can think, gee, maybe they need our love and support. And I'd reach out, or they, once a couple of them came here, and the doctors are mismanaging this situation. I'm way too drugged up. I'm non-functioning. I'm not sleeping. The drugs are making me sick in so many ways. And, the family member leaves here and goes and tells my mom, oh, well, she just sits on the couch and watches the Weather Channel on a loop over and over again. Yeah, you know what? I needed support. That family member that was here never called after that, never, ever, not once called to see, hey, how are you doing? Like the family member who saw me here in a state of shock, in a state of depression, in a state of non-functioning, in a state of really needing love and support, left here, talked about me behind my back, and never, ever called, ever, to see how I was doing. Like the lack of this dysfunctional family, the lack of understanding that I'm your family. I belong to you. I need your help and support. And I did reach out to them at one point when they were actually here and said, my daughter is struggling. Never once did they reach out. Never once did. They left here and never once called to see how myself or my daughter was doing. Not once. And they can say, oh, well, we're far away, blah, blah. Yeah, there's the phone, there's email. You can call 5 times a day. Not 0 in the next 20 years, And so I just want to get back to this moment in time when my kid is a young teenager and really becoming off the rails with being controlling and raging and out of control and outbursts with me. And I reached out to my mom for support. Mom and I were close, however close you can be when you're a dysfunctional family. And unbeknownst to me, now I hear this years later from one of the family members. Unbeknownst to me, my mom and one of my sisters was talking about potentially taking my daughter from me. So the sister who was thinking about taking my daughter, who was struggling with her own child, who was, dropping the ball in all these different ways with her own child, struggling parenting her own, was delusional enough to think that she could take on a child that's in distress, that's lost both her fathers, and my mom, who couldn't parent her own kids, who couldn't parent me and my brother or my sister. And see, when dad was still around, still alive and still around, there were the older siblings had 2 parents, right? But the time dad left and passed away, mom couldn't parent. And I love my mom. My mom was my best friend on this earth. I haven't even begun to process her death. My mom and I were really close. My mom and I were like two siblings. I never had a parent. And my mom knows that. I said to my mom a couple years ago, I've never had a mother. I said this to her on the phone. And to my shock, she said, neither did I. And I said, yeah, but your mom passed away. My mom, for her own reasons, didn't know how to parent. So I really did not grow up having a parent. And when I was little, there were two parents. I don't remember that. There was so much trauma. But so then I find out when my kid was struggling, like when she was, 14 and upwards, these two, my mom who didn't parent me, didn't, and then the sister who is struggling with her own kid and everything that's going wrong with her parenting. She's making up that the kid has genetic disorders. It's all genetic baloney. And so these two are in cahoots behind my back and talking about which one of them might take my kid. When in fact, I'm doing a pretty good job of parenting, despite me being depressed from these deaths and drowning and being overdrugged by doctors and desperately needing support of a family. My family, rather than offering us love and support, my sister not reaching out to my daughter, not wanting to love and support her, they're talking about potentially maybe trying to get my kid away from me, rather than coming together as a family and loving us and supporting us and having get-togethers and having family meals and going to a movie and having a barbecue. Like, why would the response of my family, of my daughter acting out and acting up as a teenager, why would the response be to get my kid away from me rather than loving and supporting us? I find this out like recently, that there's these, like, do you call that a conspiracy behind your back, rather than coming to my home or calling me on the phone and having a heart-to-heart conversation? What is it that you guys need? Well, we need love and support. We need family. We need to see family. We need family coming over. We need to be welcome in your home. We need to go to movies. We need love and support. How about the kids have a sleepover? How about we have a barbecue? How about we go to see the fireworks together? But that's out of the question. But what is on the table is they're talking behind my back, maybe to potentially get my kid away from me. I think in retrospect, despite the huge mountains of challenges I had, I think in retrospect, my daughter would say that I was a good mother. I would have died doing the right thing for this kid. But the fact of the matter is, we had no support. Why is that? All these homeless people on the street and stuff, why is it that these dysfunctional families do not know how to love and support each other when a crisis? Here I am sick. No, they have refused to love and support me. The relief, the way people are going to be saved, is by these sick families getting help. That's where it starts. instead of what's wrong with the scapegoat.